Hey guys, so I've talked about this a little bit in various vlogs in different amounts and degrees, but I think it's important enough that I wanted to have its own specific vlog about simplicity versus complexity. You know, when I first started martial arts, I spent 90% of my time, and I'm talking years of time, I think, studying and developing and working on shit that's only going to ever happen maybe 10% of the time in real life. If I'm really honest, I think it's probably less than that. But that's how most systems are set up. You know, you move from the basics right into advanced material, and advanced material tends to pull you away from probability and into possibility, in my experience. And so what I wanted to do with silat per temporan, which per temporan really translates to fighting without rules. You know, I've started using the term dirty boxing because some people relate to that a little better, and that's really more about who we are, is, you know, being street ready and being applicable. And so this idea of simplicity versus complexity is pretty important to me because, you know, I want to make sure people who actually train with me can actually defend themselves, that they have a better than not chance of being able to actually succeed. And so, you know, I try to flip the equation around. I try to spend 90% of our time practicing things that will happen 90% of the time. And 10% of our time is spent developing the other 10% of things out there. And frankly, that 10% of that material that's out there, that's left, that we spend our training time on, could take you a long time to develop, and I'm okay with that. I would rather you have skills that are tremendously deep in the basic, fundamentals, simple stuff, and really understand those, than be worried about all of the other things that are possible. You know, ever since I can remember training, you know, the thing I heard probably 100 times is that, hey, it always comes back to the basics. You got to have great basics. You got to have great fundamentals. And at some point I had that epiphany where I thought, well, why the hell do we ever do anything else? Like, really, if it always comes down to the basics, why do we do all this other stuff? You know, why do I have 4 levels of different kinds of kicks when it always comes down to the basic fundamentals? So, you know, so I went through that phase of chasing all that stuff around, and then I realized that personally for me, I needed to reduce the complexity of my life and move more into a simplicity of life in order to accomplish the things I wanted to accomplish. And you know, I'm still trying to live that in my everyday life. So I've worked at decreasing our fundamentals and decreasing our, you know, system complexity over the course of time, and I'm continuing to do that. And frankly, I think the system's getting better and better and better. I think, you know, we have to ask ourselves, what if instead of increasing complexity, we just got really good at piecing together simplicity? I mean, what if instead of defining it so tightly, like what might happen, we just developed our ability to adapt our simple methods? What if we just did that? What if instead of trying to answer every question that comes along by creating a new thing, we just explored our simple answers and looked for ways to chain them together? I mean, that's pretty much what PSP is doing. You know, I'm not saying it has 100% of the answers. I kind of personally believe it does, just because of my experience. You know, sometimes it'll take me a year of processing something and going, oh, you know, I could use that for that. And that has more to do with my perspective of movement and application than it does with the actual problem, with the actual material. You know, the problem is it requires us to reframe our thinking. We have to start to change what we value. We have to go from valuing complexity and adding value to something just because it's complex to valuing simplicity just because it's simple. And for me, that's been a process, right? Like, I think that my life, in general, I've started to simplify and simplify and simplify, and I don't really see me stopping. I don't see me stopping. I think that there's so much more benefit, and I get so much more time to enjoy the things that I do, the family around me, the friends around me, the time I put into my martial arts. All of it is much more enjoyable when my life is more simple. When things are hectic, I'm just stressed out. I'm stressed out. It doesn't give me value to have complexity in my life. Simplicity is where it's at. And so, if we're able to, we should really work to reframe our thinking in that regard. And, it's my opinion that you can develop much greater technical skill in simple methods if you are confined to them. If you literally say, look, I'm not going to add anything, I'm only going to take away, and you start to really just force yourself to do that. When you do that, a lot of the stuff that people think matters, it kind of goes away. It doesn't really matter. And so that's been my experience. Hopefully it'll be yours. I find that when you start to really examine the idea, the notion, you think, even a piano player, is just playing a series of simple notes that they've learned and they've strung together, with some other fundamental materials that string things together. But that's it. That's all they're doing. And they're doing some of the most complex and amazing things that, music can do with a simple instrument. And that's true, of any instrument. That's true of math. And anyway, so, that's just my take. I think, we have to learn to value simplicity, and then we have to learn to stick to it, and then really put our energy into understanding it. And through that, we can find answers to complex questions through this simple approach. That's it, man. If you're not doing that, if you're chasing the 10%, you just might be chasing a rainbow.